Welcome to GTC's Teaching Tidbits Blackboard Ultra. In this limited series, each episode we will explore a technique, tip, practice, or idea to expand your knowledge of and comfort with using Blackboard Ultra. Today, we have joining us again from the Curriculum and Instructional Support Center, the Director of Online Learning, Shannon Creighton. Welcome back, Shannon.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it.
So glad to have you on here to kind of spearhead the first couple episodes of this series. And in this particular episode, Shannon's going to walk us through an important format that is utilized in Blackboard Ultra, and that is the use of modules. So Shannon, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your teaching tidbit.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Rachel, as I get my screen share going here. So as we talked about in the first episode, that Blackboard Ultra is a redesigned version of Blackboard. It is, they are very careful to say that it is not just an updated version, but it is a reconstructed version of Blackboard, is how they are kind of selling it from the Blackboard side. And I would tend to agree with them. As you see on the screen, this is what your Ultra courses will look like. It looks vastly different than what your Blackboard original courses look like. And it's just more streamlined. It's easier for students to follow along, just as we talked about in the first episode. So one of the big features that we are going to be utilizing in Blackboard Ultra is a thing called modules. So basically, a module is just going to be a way to break down the class into smaller chunks for the students. So a module can be equivalent to a chapter in your textbook. It can be equivalent to a unit in your textbook, or some classes are building it even to the week that the students are in your class. So everything that the student would need for the week would be contained in one logical format that the student can just work their way through. So if you see on your screen here, I've got a couple examples already shown. So in this first module here, we can see that this will be week 1 of this class. So the students will go to the overview, which will be just a kind of brief introduction to what's happening that week. And then they'll go into a discussion board, and then they'll go into an assignment that they have. This could contain anything from links to your textbook, to other articles, to videos, to whatever you want the student to work through. And this will logically allow the students to work their way through this week. So I'm going to turn these on to students, and I'm going to go into the student preview and show you what this looks like. And we'll start the preview here. And so if I'm a student coming into your class for the first time, this is what I see from the student's perspective. So if I get ready to open the module here, if I click on the first one, it opens just like it did in your first one. But the great thing, which the students are loving at this point, is that they don't have to close this and go back to the main page and start over. All they do is this next button here will take them to the next item that you have listed in your module. As you see here, this is our discussion board. So we've incorporated a video, our discussion questions. They type in their response, and what do they do next? They can click on the next arrow and go right to the next assessment, or whatever piece of teaching or lectures or PowerPoints or whatever you have in mind. They can just logically go through there and do those things. So it's an easy way to set it up so that you can kind of help guide the students through the process of learning in the logical format that makes sense to you as the teacher, but also that students can easily follow. Also, you see that when you use modules, you can turn these little markers on the left-hand side, which are progress indicators. This lets the student know if they have completed that module, or if they're partway through it. You get this little half moon here if you've not interacted with everything on that page. But when you've completed all of them, this will turn green, and it will tell the student that they have completed that module and they've either interacted with every page or submitted everything that's due. And it'd be an easy way for the students to see that they have completed that week's worth of work. So I think that's a really cool feature. So what's the difference between a module and a folder? So a folder, I've set up a folder here. So if I thought I had something in that one. Let's see. I've got a folder in this one. So if I go into folder here, what I would have to do is open this, then I'd have to close this, and then I have to go into the next one, and close it. And then, so it's a lot of back and forth. And so we don't really want the students to have to go from this to that, and it just gets confusing. So we're really encouraging that you use the modules so that the students can just logically flow from one thing to the next. Folders do have a place in Blackboard Ultra, because you think about it, if I've got, you know, my overview, my lecture, my PowerPoints, you know, that list starts getting really long. And maybe I've got 2 or 3 videos that I want to have as additional resources. You can put a folder in here for just organization purposes. And if you embed it within a module, it will still lead the student logically through those things, but it just makes it less cluttered on the page for the student to see. So folders still do have a purpose, but we are definitely encouraging that you embed those folders within the module so that the students can still click through the navigation arrows. I can see sometimes that on the main page, folders might be useful if you just want to put in information that students need to refer to at some point. But for your main teaching and assessment purposes, we want to make sure that you use modules. And you can see with the folder, I interacted with everything in the folder because it was empty and I opened it. I get this nice little green check mark, which tells me as a student that I have basically completed that, and I don't need to necessarily go back to that at any point because I can see that it is completed. So let's exit this preview. We'll go back to the main page here. So it's real easy to create a module. So everything in Blackboard Ultra is dependent on this little plus arrow or this little plus purple plus here. So when you click on that, you click create, and this will give you all of the options of things that you can create, everything from learning modules to documents to tests, which we'll talk about in some of the later episodes. But basically, learning module is right there. It comes up, you give it a name, you unhide it from the students or leave it hidden if you want to. You can put a course description, and you can click save. The one last thing that I want to mention on this before I finish this episode is this thing called forced sequence. So you've planned it out. You've come up with your outline. You want the students to do your PowerPoints first, and then the discussion board, and then watch this YouTube video. You've logically laid all this work out. But then a student gets in there and they go to 1, and then they skip to the 3rd, and they do this, and they don't do it in the format that you think is best for them. When you create a module, you can turn force sequence on, which means that the student has to go through each of those things in order. The rest of the things will stay locked until they interact with the thing before it. So if you really think that the way you've laid out your module is the best and that's the way the student needs to do it, you can turn on this force sequence, which then forces the student to go through your module in the way that you laid it out. I think that that's a real useful tool, especially for things that you need to know certain things before you get into the rest of them. I think force sequence is going to be a really interesting and fun tool for you to use, and it actually will help students not get lost because you can have a little bit more control over the path that the student takes when they're interacting with your materials. So again, this is one of the really cool features of modules and of Blackboard Ultra, and we are definitely encouraging that all faculty use this and just figure out the best way to break down your class. If it's an online class, breaking it down by week, each week can have its own module. If you want to do chapters or units, you know, it's a little bit flexible that way, but it is a great way to chunk out your material and also help students to navigate a little bit better.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for sharing about this. I know when we've been talking about Blackboard Ultra, the use of modules was one of the first things that came up. And, you know, while a similar format was encouraged in Ultra, didn't always work out that way just because of the way the options were set up. So this seems much more streamlined. And then I have to say, I get excited about that forced sequence. One, because again, as an educator, sometimes there are things I want to make sure that they at least see. But two, it sounds like it's a lot easier way to kind of organize and use in somewhat different way an adaptability release without all of the amount of work that went into creating all of the adaptability releases in original. So it seems like it's a click of a button versus a lot of maneuvering around. So
Got it.
thank you so much for sharing about this module format. And this is what is encouraged for all of us to use again. And going back to the fact that this will create a sequence that makes the learning for students easier and more intuitive for them. So again, as we said before, CISC is here to help you. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, if you have questions, concerns, if you just want to talk with somebody about how you set your modules up or how you break your information apart, I know Shannon and the rest of the team in CISC are here to do that for you. So Shannon's information is here on the screen. If you want to reach out to Shannon, the email is shannon.creighton@gvltec.edu. And of course, if you want to email the department, you can email CISC at my.gvltec.edu, and one of the members of the wonderful CISC team will get back with you and will work with you to help you during this transition. Well, that's this teaching tidbit for this episode of Blackboard Ultra, and we'll see you next time.